everyone, welcome back to another special edition of Q2 2023 EVA update with your MJ Group Super Prime valuers, myself, Rob Cohen.
And myself, James Wild.
And today we have a very special guest, our colleague, partner from EVA, Cem Kurt from Denge. Cem, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing well, thank you.
Great. Really good to have you on the show. Before we go into the data and the intel and all the analytics of what's going on in your market in Turkey, as Europe is boiling over, what is the temperature like in Turkey and how are you coping?
Actually, it's around 40 degrees in Turkey and there is a heat wave. But most of the time, summers are like this in Turkey, so we are used to it.
Yeah, already acclimatized. Cem, thank you very much for joining us on the show. And obviously in the UK and also Europe, over the course of the last 12 to 18 months, it's been struggling with a number of economic, fiscal and supply chain issues, with the cost of living crisis very prevalent here in the UK, whereby wages just haven't kept pace with inflation. A recovery is somewhat at a very early stage in the UK, with the main issues for the households being housing, the cost of housing with soaring rents, and also the cost of borrowing here for those purchasing homes or refinancing, whilst energy costs have also sharply risen. Just relaying this to Turkey, what have been the main, the key economic indicators? What do they look like in Turkey and how are these affecting the economy?
Actually, Turkey have the same problems, but the figures are quite different. The inflation is much higher than the numbers in Europe. During the first 2 quarters of the year, Turkey focused on elections, and after the elections in May, significant changes took place in the management of the economy. The newly established government, they are trying to reassure the market. The newly appointed Minister of Finance, Mehmet Şimşek, is a well-known and trusted figure in the international financial markets. With a similar appointment to the central bank, the markets began to react positively. As a result, Turkey's CDS premium also decreased to 4%, while the central bank has gradually begun to raise the policy rates. Borrowing costs also started increasing. So the real estate transactions started declining, and there is almost no real estate borrowing from the banks now, because the interest rates are quite high. Meanwhile, Turkey still continues to feel the impact of the rising inflation since the pandemic period. The central bank has updated the year-end inflation target like 58%. Highlighting the need for decisive actions to combat the inflation. During this period, purchasing power has significantly affected, leading to new tax regulations being introduced by the government. And according to the latest data from the Turkish Statistical Institute, the unemployment rate is like 9.5%. 9.5%. Despite this, there is still a shortage of labor in certain occupational groups. But the growth rate is really high for Turkey, and the country keeps growing like 10 years. And the Turkish economy continues to demonstrate successful performance in terms of growth. But now the inflation is the most popular topic in the country, and it's the priority. It's the government's priority to stop the inflation.
Yeah, okay. No, thank you for that, Cem. It sounds like if inflation was able to just get sort of more so under control, that your country's economy would be performing very strongly if the economic growth has been, certainly better than the UK. The UK is teetering on the edge of a recession currently, narrowly avoiding this at the end of last year. We expanded 0.1% in the first quarter of 2023, although in the latest data, month on month, the economy for May contracted by 0.1%. So we really are sort of teetering on the edge of going to negative GDP growth here. We're just going to have to see if the energy prices manage to lower and that sort of global economic conditions remain stable. Just going back to real estate, Cem, what are the strongest performing real estate sectors in Turkey that you're seeing?
Actually, industrial and logistics are the most popular assets in recent years. They really have spectacular occupancy rates, and they really have high yields. Because the country's successful performance in exports, combined with a focus on infrastructure and transportation investments, this has put industrial and logistic properties in the forefront. And the logistic investments constructed through the country by state railways, comprising 23 logistic villages, seem to position Turkey as an important logistic hub. In addition to the negative effects of the pandemic on supply chain, problems encountered with Chinese products by Europe have led the need for new industrial hubs in Eastern Europe. Because countries like Bulgaria, Turkey, Poland are in the proximity of Europe, so Turkey is also included in this league. Those countries have become more important in the pandemic period, and this is not only limited with international relations and the politics, but also for reducing the carbon footprint and ensuring a sustainable supply chain. Because of this, the future of logistics and industrial real estate looks very promising for Turkey. And also the housing sector. It's also an attractive sector for investors. In housing sectors, Turkey's annual average housing production has fallen significantly over the last 5 years because the construction costs really increased a lot. And this led to a shortage in demand and resulted with a housing shortage. And there has been a sharp increase in housing prices and the rental prices.
Cem, sorry to interrupt, Cem. I'm just looking at the latest EVA Q2 data intel that we share with all of our partners and clients. And as you mentioned, the movement in industrial logistics, it states here that Istanbul is at approximately 7.2% yields for logistics. Can you talk us through where that's come from and where you see that heading?
Actually, there are some industrial parks, industrial properties around Istanbul, and Istanbul is a very big city, like 20 million people. The population is around 20 million people, and after the pandemic, we started buying everything from the websites, from websites like Amazon. So the need for industrial properties and logistic properties, it is increasing day by day, and also there is a very limited amount of land close to, in the proximity of Istanbul, and this causes a need in the market. The demand is very higher when it is compared with the supply. So and also another problem is Istanbul is still attracting many people, many new residents from other countries, other parts of Turkey. So the logistic properties are really important in the economy, and they are trying to put the logistic properties and the industrial properties out of the city, like 1 hour distance or 2 hour distance. There were also some industrial properties in the past. They were very close to city center, but they started new developments there. Urban renewal projects. So the number of industrial properties are reducing day by day in Istanbul, and they are going out of the city. So as long as the population increases, the demand will increase.
Yeah, thanks for that, Cem. It sounds very similar trends to actually here in the UK. Certainly, you need the very large retail warehousing to get the economies of scale, and it's just that final mile logistics, which is the difficult final hurdle for some of the providers. And as for the delivery of residential housing, it's something which, as a result of the rising construction costs here in the UK and across the globe, that is the main limiting factor in the supply of housing. Just going back to Turkey, obviously quite a popular tourist destination, Cem. Has the country's tourism, has that shaped any of the real estate sectors at all with you?
Yeah, definitely, because last year Turkey has become the fourth most visited country in the world. Tourism has grown significantly because of the construction of various number of airports and improvements in transportation. In spite of the geopolitical risks in the region, Turkish tourism sector has diversified, taking into account its rich historical and geographical heritage. This has resulted in various subsectors, including summer tourism, winter tourism, cultural tourism, religious tourism, health tourism, and gastronomy tourism. So, as I mentioned about Turkey, attracts foreign tourists from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, and also. If you go to Black Sea region, for example, this region attracts Middle Eastern tourists, and they prefer to stay in residential properties over hotels for long-term stays. So people prefer to buy houses in Black Sea region, the Middle Eastern tourists, and they prefer to stay there, especially in the summertime. And they also prefer staying short-term apartments rather than staying in the hotels. So different regions of the country offers different type of tourism, and the country tries to adjust itself to the demand of the tourists. And when it comes to southern part, Central Europeans, Northern Europeans, and Russians prefer high-rise hotels in the south, like all-inclusive package for 1 to 2 weeks. Sailing tourism also kicks off the season in Mediterranean region, and it's a popular sailing destination. And as a result, we see an increase in the number of new marina investments in this region. So I need to underline that Turkey has also achieved a significant market share in health tourism. And health tourism continues to take up an increasing portion in Turkey's tourism revenues. So this also creates a new market for Turkey, and some of the visitors they buy properties in Turkey. Once they visit Turkey, they plan to buy apartments or houses. So as you mentioned, it reshapes the housing markets, real estate markets.
Thanks, Cem. Let's move on to James and mine favourite subject. Let's go super prime, high-end property. What is happening in Turkey? What is happening more specifically in Istanbul? We are seeing a trend, a pan-European trend, a lot of demand, cash buyers, super prime is performing well. Cem, what's happening in Turkey?
Yeah, the foreign currencies gained value versus Turkish lira, like 60% in a very short while. But when you look at the prices in Turkey, the prices didn't only increase in terms of Turkish lira, I mean the local currency, but the prices also increased in terms of foreign currencies. So the prices start to be very expensive for the local people, and we also have a problem like the population is increasing highly in Turkey. It is not only the local people, but the country also attracts foreign investors and refugees immigrants. So when it comes to Istanbul, the prices almost tripled in 1 year. And there is also a lack of finance. So the locals, as I mentioned, the locals are having issues at buying properties. But when it comes to the upper class properties, we can say that upper class houses in Istanbul have reached a similar price level as their counterparts in cities like Dubai, Manchester, or Lisbon. And also a significant number of Russians and Ukrainians started living in Turkey after the war started. Prices in Istanbul, Antalya, and Izmir are going rocket high, and those are the leading cities in terms of upper class apartments and houses.
Yeah, thanks, Cem. And just focusing on that super prime still, is the best performing and the highest value residential properties in Turkey, is this largely centered around Istanbul?
Yeah, it is correct to say that the highest value properties are located in Istanbul. However, in recent years, the holiday destinations like Izmir, Bodrum, and Antalya have become competitive with upper class neighborhoods in Istanbul in terms of the prices. I mean, in the past, you could buy, for example, if you have an apartment in a good neighborhood in Istanbul, when you sell that apartment, you could buy 3 houses in Bodrum. But in today's world, it's reverse. And when you sell a good apartment in Istanbul, you can't even buy one duplex villa in Bodrum. And Antalya ranks first as it has received migration due to the war between Russia and Ukraine. And the locals can't afford the prices, and Antalya is the most expensive city, except Istanbul, of course.
Thanks for that, Cem. Just in terms of the next question, has there been any government intervention or incentive schemes offered for any of the main property sector which have boosted growth at all?
Last year, a comprehensive social housing project was initiated by the state-owned Public Housing Administration to provide housing for low-income citizens. However, in February, this year in February, a devastating earthquake happened, and it demolished 11 cities where a total of 15 million people lives. As a result, the priority shifted to providing new homes for the citizens whose houses were damaged in the earthquake. And the government is now focused on construction activities in the earthquake-affected areas. And they had some meetings. They had some meetings with the construction material producers, and they gave the priority to the earthquake region. So the amount of the construction materials are limited, and the construction cost increased in the whole country because there's a huge demand for construction materials in the earthquake region.
Yeah, just that the cost of construction again being a limiting factor on expansion there. Okay, and just sort of moving our focus, Rob and Cem, onto the office market. The UK office market's had to adapt quite significantly in the last couple of years to more hybrid working. Has there been many changes in the way that people work since the pandemic, Cem?
Yeah, before the pandemic, the occupancy rates in Istanbul were not at the desired level. So the pandemic didn't create a significant change in the office market in Turkey. However, we can say that that remote and hybrid working has increased in Turkey after the pandemic. And after the pandemic, we started working in the office, but most of the people work out of the office on certain days of the week. So it became common in the market. But even after the pandemic, there has not been a significant transformation that reduces the office demand. On the other hand, some employers took advantage of the remote working trend and emerged during the pandemic and closed offices to cut the office costs, fixed cost of the office, and allowed remote working and provided this flexibility. Although it is not very common spread, we also know that some office buildings underwent to functional changes, and they were converted into new functions such as hospitals, schools, or residential areas. But as you also mentioned, we witness a strong focus on A-class office spaces.
Yeah, that's definitely the trend in London. Those Grade A office spaces, which obviously are more limited, are definitely the most sought after and popular, and obviously drive the highest rates per square foot and prices.
And the office providers, they really increased their space a lot, like Regis or the Turkish brands. They are really now much more stronger than before the pandemic in the market.
Brilliant. That's great, Cem. Really appreciate your insight and knowledge on the Turkey real estate market. And for everyone that subscribes and watches and listens, please download or subscribe for your EVA data quarterly update. It is the best data intel that you will find across the pan-European markets, and for all of our clients and all of our subscribers, it is there for you now and live. Please take advantage of that and look into that, and any information or questions that you have around that data, please contact us. Thanks, James. Thanks, Cem. Great show, and we look forward to seeing you in the next quarter as EVA move forward with their quarterly update, and James and myself as the MJ Group Super Prime specialists. Thanks, James.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks very much again, Cem, for coming on the show and answering all our questions.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure to